got to fix that, 'cause I don't know whether I'm running early or late or.
You're late. You're late.
You were late, man.
Come on, Rex. We've got an opportunity to fix
Let's
it.
have a watch.
I have a clue what time it is.
201.
Okay.
Please. Lord, it's always an honor and a privilege to gather together in this room with these people to conduct the business of the Cherokee people. It is an honor to be in this position, and it's an honor to represent the people that we represent. And please bless all that we do with your wisdom, your knowledge, and your guidance. In Jesus' name, amen.
Shelley.
I will. Once again, I'm going to do 2 roll calls again. E.O. Smith.
Here.
Harley Buzzard.
Here.
Joe Burris. Mike Dobbins.
Here.
Ken Duncan.
Ani.
Mike Shambaugh.
Here.
Mary Bakershaw. Monty. Denise Taylor.
Here.
Victoria Vesquez.
Ani.
On this one, I'll need to know if you want to be a part of the committee as well. Keith Austin.
Here, yes.
Julia Coates.
Here. Yes.
Sean Crittenden.
Here.
Joe Deere.
Here, yes.
Rex Jordan.
Here, yes.
Darrell Legg.
Here, yes.
Wes Snowfire.
Here and yes.
Dora Petzkowski.
Here. Yes.
We have a quorum.
Thank you.
Approval of the minutes from August the 12th.
Second.
Got a motion and a second? Need a vote.
Yes.
All in favor, aye.
Asking.
Okay, we're going to reports. Management Resources, Mr. Moore. Don't learn from me, okay?
Good afternoon. Hope everyone's doing well. You have our report. I'm here to try to answer any questions that I can. If I can't, I'll get you the answers.
Have any questions for Mr. Moore? Harley?
I want to ask my question about the pine trees again. Are we going to get somebody here to
It's
answer
in
this?
USDA's hands. Or I'll take that, BIA's hands.
Chad's going to take that one.
Thank you, Chad. But yes, it is in BIA. We're waiting on their decision on the NEPA stuff.
So my understanding with the pine trees is that, my understanding is that there's a disagreement in terms of paperwork between the BIA and the USDA on the 106 process, and so it's currently stuck in a bureaucratic delay, I guess you could say, with those two groups. And it's a problem that we can't necessarily solve, and so we're working with them to hopefully overcome some of that. But I think it's going to extend out this project and our USDA contract for funding a little bit longer. And so I don't have any certain time of when that's going to be resolved, but that's just currently where it's at.
And the reason I bring this up, there's 12,000 acres of pine up there. We haven't thinned those things in 20, 25 years. We've got pine trees about that big around, about 2 foot apart, and it makes common sense to do something with them. I mean, it's not burn them off, push them off, and let's put grass in it. That's the reason I keep asking. Chad, I appreciate you and David checking on it. Keep after BIA and keep after USDA. It's ridiculous to have our properties like that and can't do anything with it. So appreciate your work.
I think Pat is in conversation with them about twice a week on updates. So
Good deal.
he's staying on them.
Yeah.
Good deal. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Any other questions?
Yeah, hardly 12,000 acres on Cherokee land. Right?
Well, I'm saying 12,000. I could be wrong with the acreage, but there's a lot of acreage.
We still use 2x4s to build houses and stuff. I mean, do they
Not
still
big
use
enough around.
pine
They
2x4s
could.
every now and then?
They do.
There you go,
Like
huh?
Lolly.
We need a few houses.
Most of these are too small to really get dimensional lumber out
Yeah,
of.
but 12,000 acres. A few 2x4s over there, wouldn't it?
I'm thinking free Christmas.
Thank you. Thank you. I know you're doing what you can.
Yeah.
David, what's the status of the former Berry property?
It's in the remodel phase right now. We've We're updating a lot of, electric was, not up to code, brought it up to code. We've got a lot of security, things we're putting in there, and it's getting close, I'm being complete.
What was the purchase price of that
I
property?
cannot tell you. I can find out.
Chief of staff was here.
Ginger might know.
We can get you that answer, Council.
Okay. So when will it be available for counselors to tour it? No.
2 or 3 weeks, probably. I mean, we're that close. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I said last night, are the buffalo through calving?
Say that again?
Are the buffalo, we still having calves?
No, we hadn't had any in a while.
So is that probably gonna be it for the year?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think we're probably there. We have one that's accident now.
Does happen.
It does happen. But yeah, I think that it's pretty much over.
Wonder what percentage calving we're getting out of that, out of the herd?
We had about 26 or 27 calves this year.
Uh-huh.
So we had, yeah, about 156 total, counting the calves.
Right?
You know, David, I may have asked this, but I don't remember the answer. Do we milk our buffalo?
No, ma'am.
May I ask why not?
I have no idea.
You grab one of them things.
We don't have a dairy. I work in a rodeo environment, though. It might be pretty interesting, but no. I don't know. I've
Well,
never
I mean,
even.
if we're having calves, could we not get a herd of the calves and train them to be tamed somewhat? And at least, I saw a Sunday morning show recently, and it was talking about the best mozzarella in the world is made with. Yes, you saw this too.
Wow.
Actually heard that. Yes,
Wow.
with bison milk.
I mean, it's understandable. I mean, the meat's better for you, so.
Yeah, and so I was just wondering if it would not be another way to generate revenue and perhaps more jobs.
Your bison
I
typically.
guess we could look into that, but you're talking, that'd be a pretty good herd to do something. I mean, have a commercial, more or less, milking process.
But is it,
One and 2 acres.
you're saying, so you think it's pretty unrealistic though,
Well, I
right?
don't know. Right now, it is. Right now, I'd say it's pretty unrealistic. I mean, we don't have the facilities set up or the knowledge right now for something like that. But I'm not saying it's out of the. I mean, we could probably get there if we were told
They
to.
won't bring it because they cycle.
Well, I want to be the first to say, if you need a study group to go to Italy to study how to make mozzarella, all the girls, we will be happy to volunteer to do that. Because, truthfully, if it would generate more jobs and more income and be healthier, I think it's something that, down the road would be worth studying into.
We'll look at it, see, because it's very interesting. I hadn't seen that.
I'll bring some cheese back.
Yeah, Victoria.
They don't make it in Wisconsin?
No?
How many buffalo cows are there?
I think there was 100 and, I may have that. Seemed like there was 105 or, I don't have it broke out. I'll check and get it to you. But it seemed like there was, last time I remember, it was like 105, seemed like, for some
Some of them
reason.
are slackers, right?
They must be.
Are we?
I think our
Maybe it's the
bulls,
bull.
we didn't have, we don't have,
Blame it on the bulls.
the bulls to cow ratio isn't quite right
Right.
for us that we have.
Okay, thank you.
Motion is.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just follow it. We talk about it all the time. There was an article in the paper about the buffaloes. We talk about it so much is, when are we you gonna get us a plan for them?
I'll have to get with administration, we'll get it out to you.
I mean,
'Cause I'm-
we
yeah.
talk about it a lot, and I know you're in a
Yeah.
position where,
I'm in kind of limbo right now, yeah, but we either
I think
need to grow
everybody
them
here-
or stay where they're at, one of the two. I mean, really and truly, we're at that point.
what do you say about maybe next month, have a,
I can try to get something, yeah, I can get something pulled together. I mean, we have some ideals, it's just, we gotta get new direction, and stuff like that. So I'll throw those questions out there, see what we can get. Because we are at that point. We either need to grow them or, let them sell them out. Yeah, one of the two. I mean, we're kind of, it's costing us a little bit right now.
We have an amazing facility. We have an amazing facility to have
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I hate to see the facility go, not
Yes.
because we can't utilize it in some
Yes.
form of capacity.
Yeah. Yeah, they require a little more care than regular cattle. That's why I say care, land.
Right,
They're a roamer.
right. If
so-
there's someone we can expand, I mean, I think there's close to 14,000 acres up there.
Exactly.
We can grow that
Yep.
potentially into doing something. We just
Right.
gotta, like I said, have a plan.
Yeah, we need to
What
grow
can
them
you do
big
with it?
enough to harvest meat and stuff like that from them, so.
Okay. Do we have, I know you said our bull stock's low. Is there a way we need to look into getting more in there so we have a
Yeah.
higher reproduction
And that's
rate with
part
our
of the
cows?
plan, that's part of the plan, that we gotta either grow it or, we do need to switch out and get some new bloodline in. And
Yeah.
we work with the Quapaw a little bit on trading out and stuff.
Yeah, because it's got to be it's different than cattle. They got to be like 6 years old before they're able to breed those on the male
That's
side.
what they say, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's some that say it's a little younger than that, so I think it's a little iffy,
Yeah.
still with them, but yeah,
Okay.
they gotta be a little older.
Any other questions for Mr. Moore? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good job. Next up, Real Estate Services, Ms. Ginger Reeves.
Good afternoon. Hey, Ginger. I think you all have a copy of my report. If you have any questions, I will be happy to address them.
Any questions for Ginger? Go ahead.
Are we finished, I guess, mapping out all the restricted land that's in our jurisdictions? Are we close to mapping them
Are you
out?
talking about the TAMS project?
Yeah.
No, we're looking maybe December, January. I'm hoping I'm thinking December, January. We
Okay.
should have it all encoded with the BIA.
If you have a person whose name is entitled and they're deceased, are you guys notifying the family? I guess that the land that they have, as in could be in probate or the restriction land under the Stigler Act Amendment, does away with the blood quantum. Are we able to notify those families now?
When it comes to our attention, generally the families will come to the office and we'll help them with their application for a probate if it's unrestricted land.
Okay.
Yes.
So if that family can't afford to probate the estate, or they don't have enough money in their IIM account, who probates? Are we paying for that?
We are paying for the probates, yes. Right now, we are.
Okay.
Yes. From monies appropriated to the council, yes.
And so are we, I guess, who's probating that on the attorney aspect of it? Are we sending those out?
Our Attorney
or-
General's office.
Okay. Okay, perfect.
We have Linda Donaldson, who was in Real Estate Services, and she is a guru on probates.
All right, perfect.
Restricted properties specifically.
Great, appreciate it. All right. Thank you, Trigger.
Ginger, are all your services restricted to in jurisdiction?
I'm sorry?
Are your services strictly, are they restricted to inside jurisdiction?
Mainly, yes, yes. Of course, we have people who still have ties to this area that we talk to all the time, specifically in probate matters, and so we make phone calls to them, we have correspondence to them outside the jurisdiction all the time, if they tie back to properties here.
If it ties back to property here?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Ginger, we have had some communication about a piece of property in Chelsea that is next to the railroad, that there's some easement confusion with, apparently, about our role in it. I know of that happening twice, where it really complicates a small community trying to do something with a piece of property that is kind of in a prime location for economic development. Can you help me understand that just a little bit better about why that's happening or how that happens?
If I remember right, that particular, on both of those properties, it reverted back to the city because it was no longer used by the railway. But I'll be happy to share that work product with you. And I'll I'll send that to you this afternoon.
We just get, on that particular piece of property, every attorney seems to not know what to do with it. And our name appears on it historically somewhere.
Yes, yes.
And it costs the city more money trying to figure out how to get title opinions and those kind of things cleared up because of it.
And some of those attorneys have contacted our office, and we share that information with them.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Any other questions for Ginger?
Ginger, do we have housing on restricted land? Do we still have houses that are residents that are on restricted land or tribal lands out there?
Like MHH homes. Yes, we have housing in restricted lands, yes.
Okay.
We have houses out there, lots of houses on restricted lands. Are you talking about MHH specifically?
Yes.
Yes, we do, some.
What I was thinking is this 30 million that we received for rehab, you know, I was looking at how we make priority to those people that live on those lands, because that's the responsibility of the tribe, the federal lands that we have. I was wanting to look at that and see if that's something that we need to make a priority, because those probably, if I were going to guess, are the neediest. It's just a food for thought. I haven't looked at that legislation completely, but I think we will before it's time to vote on it or pass it.
We'll be happy to help in any way.
Yeah, we
any way
probably
can.
need your help in that.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? Thank you,
I do
Ginger.
have one update, Harley,
Good.
Councilman Buzzard, on Oak Hill Piney. We had Don Wallace from C&B to go out there, and they are going to be able to remove that painting without any damage to it. So that's a positive. They met out there last
Cecil
week.
Mural.
Yes.
So do we know what we're gonna do with the painting yet?
I do not.
Okay.
We met with them last week, and they thought it was something that would be, they'd be able to do.
Yeah, I knew they were going out and take a look at it. They called me
Yeah.
about it, or directions, actually.
Yeah.
Good.
We got a nice middle drawer to go put that painting in at the Heritage Center.
Yes, I do have a question.
Go ahead, you Scott.
I was gonna ask you about the transfer of those property at Oak Hill. Has that been completed?
We're still waiting on the BIA. We're still waiting on the BIA.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
So maybe, once it's removed, could we possibly look at keeping it in the community somewhere? If there's a building to put that in, could we keep it in that community? Would
I'm
that be
sure that
an
would be
option?
something you all could talk about. I just know that CMB brought Don Wallace, I don't know what his exact title is, but some type of restoration folks with him as well, and they were able to do that. So that would be something you could talk
Well, I
about.
know that the people in the community were, if that was possible, they would like to keep it in that community if that would be possible.
Sure. There's a reason they put it there.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Where is this painting at?
Oak Hill, right where Shamball area is. Harley, you want to explain it to her, Shamball, where it is?
It's, it would be east of J, probably 5 or 6 miles, maybe 7, and back to the south a little bit. It's between J and Arkansas. It's just a small community. It's an Indian community. It's been there for, forever. There's an old school there, and that's where the painting is.
And who is the artist?
Cecil Dick.
Okay.
It's a mural. It's
It's
like
a
in 3
mural.
pieces there. Probably 18 to 20, maybe, is it that long?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it's like a 4 by 15. I mean, it's been there forever.
You know, there are 2, one in Nowata and one in Pahuska in the post office. The one in Nowata was Woody Crumbo, and the one in Pahuska is Olive Rush. They're on the inside, and fortunately they've been fairly well preserved. But, so you think that can be removed from this school and then placed somewhere else? Is that-
That's the plan.
That building is it's probably condemned, isn't it?
It's close to, if not.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen it?
I have not seen that one.
Okay.
stickball.
And there's not much damage to it?
Yeah, it's in very good shape.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Good report, Ginger.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Environmental Services, Mr. Tom Elkins.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. Walking kind of funny. I watched the grandkids play football this weekend, sat on those bleachers, but it was a widowmaker. But,
I'll do it.
felt like I've been in a bar fight. You have our report, and be happy to answer any questions. One thing that's not on the report that I mention every year, and I will again this year, is the fishing day at the holiday. I always say it's the, I'm sorry?
How many did you have?
I think it was well over 300 because I didn't get an official number, but there were so many kids there. It was great. There were a lot of those kids caught catfish. I mean, good frying size. But they had a really good time, I think. And, you know, as many years as we've done this now that I've been a part of it, I can't believe nobody's gotten a hook in their back of their head, their ear or something, but they don't. And it's amazing to see the kids do, and the parents. There were so many, you know, we have those trees right around there. They got stuck there, but they didn't get in anybody's neck or their ear or anything. But I think everybody had a good time, and it went very smooth this year. Sometimes we have some hiccups with people. You know, they have to be present to win because we have to get those prizes out so quick. But this year it went super smooth, and I think all the kids had a good time. The grandkids came to that too and said, "Why can't you pull my number?" I don't pull them, so. But I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Tom, I think you're the right program to ask this to. Prior to the casino opening in Fort Gibson, did we utilize your program to go in and check for mold or anything like that following the water that
No. The CMB usually uses a private firm for those types of things. Now, we have worked with them on other things, but on that particular thing, no.
So CMB employs someone other than...
They get, usually on stuff like that, they'll get a third party to do that.
Is
just to cover them.
that better?
Well, it's not so much better, but on certain instances, it's good to get a third party's opinion on stuff like that to keep any liability issues that you're relying on this third party that you can come back on if there were issues. I mean, we work with them on a lot of different things, but on that particular project, we didn't.
Specifically on that one, because the damage was covered by insurance, we use a company that instead of them paying us to pay the people, the insurance carrier directly sent in a company to do all of the rehabilitation work on that. So it was all a third party, and the company was actually picked and sent by the insurance company.
Very good. I appreciate knowing that. Thank you.
Good question.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thanks. Hi.
How are you doing, ma'am?
Good to see you again.
Me too.
I have a question from a constituent, and I confess I know nothing about this, and I think you may be the right person to ask, but they are asking about provisions of the Safe Drinking Water Act and the Clean Water Act that are specific for tribal communities and tribal governments, and are we involved in
Oh,
those
absolutely.
actions at all?
Safe Drinking Water Act is groundwater. Clean Water Act is surface water, and we do a lot of different things. We work specifically with engineering, sanitation engineering on groundwater. They do most of the work on the groundwater stuff, testing wells and that type of thing. Kenwood is within our district, and it's one of these things that they use groundwater, but it's a groundwater surface water interaction. So we look at that quite closely. Surface water, we have a Clean Water Act grant, and if you look through our reports, we try to look at gaps where the state and the feds aren't doing testing, and we try to do that where folks fish, that kind of thing. You know, you just never have enough money to do everywhere, but we try to pick the gaps that are the most relevant for us.
Are there recent actions or current actions going on that you're aware of with tribes around the country? You know, the gist of the question that I get is that there's some kind of threat perhaps to the legislations themselves, or that there's something that tribes around the country are beginning to
Well,
coalesce and take action on?
EPA and the Corps of Engineers, they're tweaking the 401, the water quality certification. And so we've looked at that in several means. And I mean, Secretary Harsh, I'm sure, I've made him aware of some of that. But it's not threats to our, but we absolutely do look at those things consistently, because they're always looking at different, especially during this administration, of things that they might tweak a little bit. And so, yeah, we do try to ensure that we're covered on all those.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
On your lead-based paint inspections, are you seeing on as far as training, not only with contractors and vendors, that they're getting that updated lead-based paint for as much stuff going on in construction right now?
Absolutely. In fact, they recently, I say recently, the most recent lead-based paint legislation has been working with like people that aren't lead-based paint professionals, plumbers, electricians, and things, where if they disturb in a house that was built pre-1978, these other people, other type of tradesmen, they have to have a measure of lead-based paint training to be, they either have to assume, let's say they're working on this table and it's got paint on it and they're going to remove it for whatever reason. They have to either assume that it's lead-based paint on there if it's pre-78, or they have to have it tested. And they have to have a measure of training, if they're going to assume this is lead-based paint, that they have to have a measure of training on how to safely handle that lead-based paint. So that's kicking in quite a bit. You know, lead poisoning is one of the leading cause of preventable environmental diseases that kids can have. And we've come a long way in that. I mean, the Cherokee Nation, we have more lead-based paint professionals than anybody else in the state. Outside tribes in the state, anywhere. In Oklahoma, we have more lead-based paint professionals than any other entity because we do that much work.
Yeah, because with Speaker talking about with all the housing, the 30 million, with all those rehabs, usually pay item one has to deal with lead-based paint.
Absolutely.
Or mobilization. And that's usually on 70% of those houses that are rehab.
If they're pre-78, absolutely.
Yeah, every one of them is on there. So the question is going to be, yeah, we have that money, but do we have the professionals that
we absolutely
can take
do.
care of that load?
Absolutely.
Okay, and do you
Now,
still
a lot
do
of those
sustainability reports and stuff like that?
Sustainability
reports, like
what specific?
Either environmental stuff, like what the tribe does. This is just sort of a question out there.
Not sustainability per se. I mean, that covers a lot.
Like recyclables, stuff like that.
Well, I mean, our department doesn't do that specifically, but Management Resources, they have the recycling facility behind what's called the FRB.
Yep.
And we did the grant for that during the stimulus. And so we got them some equipment, some other things so that they can do it a little bit more efficiently. And I think as time goes on, they're going to be doing more and more and more on that.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
Tom, in your report, you've taken samples of Spavinaw, Uchi, even a town branch here in Tahlequah. What do you do with those reports, and then what is the status of the town branch in Tahlequah?
The town branch has went up and down a little bit. You know, that what's been in the news a little bit. And our group has been working with the city of Tahlequah on that. They've had levels of bacteria higher than what is acceptable. And I just happen to know this, but I mean, the Methodist home over there has had, some of that has drained kind of into that creek. And so they've had that fixed. We've worked with them so that we do that sampling in-house so they don't have to pay for it. We have the ability to do it. It doesn't cost us a lot of money. And then the city doesn't have to go to outside firms to do that because we can do it readily. And Wayne Isaac's groups has folks go over there and do that every so often just to make sure that that's being handled. But Tahlequah being an old city like this, we have a lot of septic tanks that are still within the city limits. And whenever you have that, you're going to be having coliform and fecal coliform in water. And so it's difficult to trace back those things back to a certain property. It wasn't with the Methodist home, but because that's a large entity and they had some problems with their sewers. But we have that in the city. We have a problem with that.
Okay, and the other question was like Spavinaw and Uchi. If you find nitrates or those things to be a high level, what do we do with that then?
that goes
Have you
into,
found any of this stuff?
well, we find things all the time. Now, some of those water bodies, I don't have it sitting in front of me, that are, that have issues, and they can be, most of our waterways around here have issues for amounts of nutrients that come in there, whether it be phosphorus or other nutrients, and a lot of that is from the chicken issues that we're having. But those come from other things. When we develop along waterways, like on the Illinois River, our septic tanks cause that. We have cattle that are in surface water to drink and things, and they do other things in that surface water too. And so all that combining does increase the nutrient loading in that. So we keep an eye on that, and all of our data has a certain measure of quality that's with that. So it all goes into a federal database with the EPA.
And who's the Region 6 environmental person in Dallas now?
You know, I don't know. I don't remember off the top of my head.
You know, we used to have a Cherokee that, Janine Hale was there.
Oh, well, yeah. We do have Randy, he's Creek.
Yeah, okay.
He's Creek, and he used to work with our office. I thought you meant the administrator, but yeah, certainly. So we do have some people that we've either have worked for us and we've trained up, or that we've known for several years, in fact, decades.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Tom? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good job.
If I can stand up, I'll be all right.
Secretary of Natural Resources, Chad Harshaw.
Yoga class at Tom.
Good afternoon. This is my first opportunity to address this body as the Secretary of Natural Resources, so I look forward to speaking with you guys on a regular basis and look forward to the opportunity. So that being said, we're still kind of in a state of transition, so I have a fairly short report, and I'll go through. The first thing Tom mentioned was our fishing derby. That, as you guys know, that was a great success. I think we had some of the numbers I've heard preliminarily around 500 to 600 folks come out, so it was a huge success, and probably the biggest event we've had so far since we've been doing it. We also had great attendance at our native plant garden. This was, my understanding, was probably either the most or second most attended event that we've ever had for the holiday. So we have a lot of folks that come out to the plant garden, and a lot of interest, and I think we had a lot of groups have reached out to us about future events that we can hold there. So it's moving along well. The other thing is in regard to our seed bank. The end of last month, we had a storm come through that caused about 90% damage to some of our crops and 50% to others. So we have a pretty big loss. Now, we still think that we're going to be able to satisfy all of the seed bank requests this year. It's unfortunate, but those things happen sometimes. So can't predict weather events, but we do think that we're still going to be able to meet the demand. Other than that, it's a fairly short report, and hopefully next month I'll have a little bit more for you guys after we get settled in a little better on our end. So with that, if there's any questions.
Any questions for Chad?
When you said our numbers were up, this might be a question for our chief of staff. What kind of numbers have been reported for our Cherokee holidays? Different events. I mean, overall. I mean.
Yeah, I don't have the number specifically for Cherokee holiday.
Our chief of staff probably.
I have asked Anna Knight, who's a holiday coordinator, reports to her, for what those results are. They're actually tabulating across all the different groups. Anecdotally, what she said was it seemed like some of the event numbers were down on Friday, but all of the event numbers on Saturday were up. We don't know if that's related to other events at other locations. Some of the other tribes had a powwow on Friday night as well. The weather being a factor of whether or not it was going to rain or not. But across the board, we felt like Saturday's numbers were up quite a bit as opposed to Friday's numbers.
And we'll get those numbers from the gift shop and some of our
Yes. So we'll have a combined report to give to you guys hopefully within the next 15 to 20 days.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Our hunting and fishing compact, it's expiring again coming end of the year. What's the direction or talks that we're going to look at?
So we've had some preliminary discussions with the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation, and the Choctaw Nation also has a hunting and fishing compact that's coming up or expiring at the end of this year. So we have a conversation coming up again, following up on where we were, and I think we're in a good place to move forward with favorable negotiations, and that's encouraging in light of some of the other compact issues that we have in the state of Oklahoma with Indian tribes. So I don't have a whole lot to report in terms of details, but here pretty soon that information will be available.
All right, thanks.
I think Councilor Shambaugh brought this up, but are there going to be some talks about bow and arrow on the hunting compact?
Yeah, I mean, I think we already have right now we currently have rifle tags or deer gun tags, but that is one of the things that we're looking at expanding. There's been a lot of demand for that, and hopefully that's something we can make available.
It goes hand in hand with culture and everything.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just one more quick thing. I guess on these talks and negotiation, are we talking with the Choctaws as well? I know they seem to have a more in-depth grasp on their compact versus what our compacts look like. Seems like they are able to get their citizens a lot more than what we have previously gotten them.
I think as far as which compact's better, I don't know that they have a better compact than we do. I mean, the difference between the Choctaw and the Cherokee Nation are the number of licenses we issue. Ours is probably on the order of 2 to 3 times that. And so, we do coordinate with them, but they also have different priorities than we do for what our compact, what the goals of our compact will be. We do coordinate with all the tribes on our common interests, and this is one of them. So we have had some conversations with them, but the next step is for us to continue our conversation with the state.
All right, thanks.
Yes, Michelle.
Chad, would it be possible for any consideration to be made toward a temporary hunting license for a citizen perhaps who's coming into the state of Oklahoma to visit for a week or something, family out of town, or an at-large citizen wanting to come in to try to hunt or something? Is there any chance that you could offer consideration toward a temporary license, say for 3 days or something?
That's certainly something that we could take. The difference that you have is the funding formula. That the way this compact works, it depends on certain number of licenses being purchased, and then that in turn triggers a cash infusion from federal programs. And so that only applies to resident licenses, people within the state that get a license. So there is a different financial calculation that would be at play when considering that, but it's something that we certainly we could see the value in that, and so I think that's something we could consider.
You could consider, I would appreciate it. That would, I mean, I'm not asking for, thousands and thousands, but, just a reasonable amount of money for somebody whose family may be coming in. I'm sure every counselor here has family or something that could come in and would like to request something like that for a 3-day window or something. I would appreciate you checking that out. Thank you very much.
Will do.
I know whenever we go to North Carolina, the Eastern Band, their marshals, police, they actually give us a little card, and it's kind of just a temporary pass type deal like that, where, we're there for 2 or 3 days and we can fish for, those days we were there.
Right.
So.
Well, and I know that the land status for the Eastern Band is a little bit different than some of ours. Ours is more complex in the way that we have our jurisdiction. And so I don't know that we could compare our ability to do that compared to theirs right now, but that's something that we'll hold on to.
What, going back to this fishing deal, the kids deal, was there a age limit on that, on the kids?
I'm not sure. I can find out.
Well, I heard that Kanan Duncan had a chance to win his first tournament. Any backlash to Snoopy Pole and lost. So next year you might, he's got the height down, but he's a little older.
We'll keep an eye on him next year.
I appreciate that. Not fair.
Any other questions for Chad?
One more question. How much money has the state received for the compact on previous years that we've had with them?
I don't have that information in front of me, but it is substantial.
It is a substantial amount. And before that, they didn't have a compact. They didn't receive the money. So
They still receive the money based on the number of licenses they issue, but, the increase in the number of licenses that are issued necessarily results in more federal funding coming their way. Now, it also depends because the value that they receive for every license they issue fluctuates based on the amount of money that they have appropriated by Congress and the amount of license issued by each state generally across the country. And so it's a pretty complex formula that changes every year.
Right.
But I would say that number is substantial.
Have we seen, and I've not noticed much in my district, but I don't know, has Cherokee Nation seen much of a impact from those dollars that the state receives from those compacts?
I can't speak specifically on any type of projects. I mean, the money that they receive is split up in different funding pools, part of which goes to administrative costs, having game rangers, things like that, and then other is conservation dollars. And so I don't know that I could point to any specific project off the top of my head in this area, but I think that it definitely has resulted in increased funding across the state and northeastern Oklahoma.
Is there, this is just trying to purely learning on it, would those funds not be made available, for instance, since that is our sovereign right to hunt and fish within our own jurisdiction? If we started controlling those regulations, would those federal funds not be available for us to start controlling them? And say, for instance, if we're issuing our own licenses, kind of like we are right now, instead of purchasing them at, I think we have $300,000 what we spend a year purchasing them. Would some of those federal funds and the money that we're using to buy licenses in turn go back for maybe taking some marshals and using those as, like what you say out there in North Carolina, controlling the jurisdictional boundaries that we have, also issuing our own license to our citizens and controlling a little bit more of our waterways and our land?
So I think that, that there's two parts to that answer to that question. I think the first being that I don't have the law in front of me, but I don't know that it treats the tribals the same as would the state in terms of federal funding and cash infusion for the number of issuing of licenses. So I don't know that we would be treated the same for federal funding purposes, but I can research that technical fact. My suspicion would be that we're not. The other part would be the reason why you have compacts are because of the differing of legal opinions as to who and what can hunt when and where and fish when and where. And the reason why you have compacts is to lower the tensions of that ambiguity in the law and people's differing views and legal opinions so that you don't find yourself in a litigious situation. And particularly in this case, it opens the door for significant, substantial federal funding to come into Oklahoma, northeastern Oklahoma, which is good for all of us.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know that we would be eligible for that funding otherwise, and I don't know that issuing licenses throughout the 14 counties would be an appropriate thing to do at this time.
Okay, and just kind of maybe a thought process of what I've kind of talked to some people, because we hey, listen, I grew up hunting and fishing is the way we lived. I mean, it wasn't something for fun, it was just the way we had to survive. And, not saying that we broke any laws or anything like that, but, when hunting license and fishing, you did what you had to do. And there's still people that live like that. Our citizens still live that way. Maybe it could be something as simple as, instead of prescribing a license, that you're able to use your Cherokee citizenship card to be able to use those restrictions and those laws that govern our ability to hunt and fish within our jurisdictions. It's possible negotiations coming up. Just because, we have to purchase these licenses and then you have to apply, and then just like we ran into this past spring where people couldn't even get a license printed. So they were told that you still had to go buy one through the state.
Well, and we did have a period of time there where we had some administrative disconnects between our system and their system, and I think we've worked that out, and that's something that we have approached with them to make sure that doesn't happen again. But the way that we issue our licenses now is if you've already received one and we've determined that you're within the age band that's appropriate to receive one, we issue them every year to the same folks. So it's not an annual reapplication process.
Right.
And the information that's contained on the CDIB card is one of the things that we use and consider when identifying who to issue a license to. And so in order to receive that federal funding, there has to be a license issued, right? And you have to have a identifiable number that triggers a payment, and then the license is issued, and then that's used in the formula to get federal funding. So I think we already do something similar to that.
Right.
You know, but it does require a little bit more documentation between our system and their system to get those licenses issued.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it, Speaker.
Mr. Shaw, do you have a question?
No, thank you.
Harley?
Just back to what Councilor Nofar was talking about, and I think our compact says that we get one deer and one turkey. I think the Choctaws compact says they get several deers and several other animals to do, so. If I remember back when we did the compact, we were paying the state $150,000 a year for that. I don't know if that's right or not, but is there any way that I could get a copy? I don't know if anybody's seen a compact, but I remember seeing one that did. To look at that compact before the negotiations start on it again. I'd like to get a copy of it.
To see the existing compact?
Yeah.
Sure, I can email that out to you
Okay,
guys.
if you would email it to them, and I don't know if anybody else wants to look at it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd be interested.
Maybe to everybody.
And I have a follow-up question too, Chad. I'm not sure I'm asking the right person, but I think I am. The agency that we're trying to get out of the Bureau to come into our Natural Resources office here, are you working on that? Are you part of that group?
I'm not sure what you mean by
It's
that.
the VIA agency. We used to have an agency here in the compact. Now they're taking it back, and can't remember the lady's name that's working on that. Bird, do you remember, what's her name?
Karen Ketcher,
Where did she work?
That's Karen Kitcher.
Yeah,
Karen Ketcher, self-government?
Yeah, Karen Ketcher. I need to ask Karen, so she's the one that brought that up.
I'm not sure. I can try to find out.
All right. Well, it was brought up last month that we hadn't had one here, I think for the last 8 or 9 years. And we were trying to get that agency back over here, and so I didn't know if he was involved with that or not.
I'm not, but I certainly will look into it for you.
Thank you. Thanks, sir.
We met earlier with this guy, the Jared Miller, over at the Heritage Center, and all the archives area.
Sure.
He had some really good ideas, and the one thing that shocked me was when they said they do everything that's downstairs, they do not have a full inventory on all that. It's just sort of like thrown in the bottom. When we're talking about preserving culture and all that stuff, he also told me that the state has a bunch of our paperwork that we can't have because we don't have the NAGRA people here and all that stuff too. So basically what I'm asking is, can you or somebody in your office, because he has some really great ideas to preserve a lot of that stuff that's down there. I think that's a real big deal if we're talking about culture and stuff like that. I mean, a lot of these guys seen and saw all of the stuff that we had down there. So if you could get somebody to visit with him, he has a bunch of knowledge about that. And we got stuff shoved in a desk with a master lock. We talk about Cherokee Nation having money, but it's a master lock. These are important documents. So if you could, or get something and figure that out.
I'll certainly look into that.
Yeah, because there's a lot of stuff down there that's pretty cool.
Counselor, I was just going to comment, the AG's office administration is working with Dr. Gord and the Heritage Center Board. There are plans in the works for an archive building, but more immediately there are plans in the works to take some of those very important documents and still store them at Gilcrease until we can get a sufficient building built. But there's a group actively working on this.
Okay,
for
good.
Money and space
Yeah,
and that type of thing.
I know it's always taking money, but the guy has a really great idea, so that's cool. All right, thanks.
Yep.
Just a real quick observation. I can tell you this, as far as restricted land goes, Indian land, if during hunting season, if there's a call, game wardens, state of Oklahoma game wardens don't respond to those calls on restricted land. It has to be a marshal.
Okay.
So just.
And the crazy thing is on that too, is that the game that's on our restricted land, the game still belongs by the state. That's where the confusion thing is with these compacts. Because even though it's federal land and we have all these restrictions on it, the compact doesn't, clarify anything of our citizens if they're going on a restricted land to hunt. If they kill a deer on there and they don't have a license, they still have to be obligated through the state law to get that, even if you haven't issued them one. Say, for instance, they're on one of those identified ones that got one. I never got a Cherokee license until this year. I experienced that problem of going and getting my fishing license this year upstairs and got told that we couldn't print one and that I had to go buy one from the state. So, yeah.
But also, if you kill that deer on restricted land up until the time you take it off, once you take it off, then a state game warden can then enforce whatever, but if you stay on restricted land, they don't. So, just saying, it's just kind of odd.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Chad? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Old business done pending, new business done pending. I need one motion and a second.
Second.
All in favor? We are adjourned.